Here we are learning Dvar Malchut of the royal words of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, King Messiah. Here we have the words of Moshiach, and just like we just finished learning in Torah, or the job, the purpose, the ability of Moshiach is to imbue every human being in the world, beginning with the Jews, the feeling of the certainty of the creator of the universe, that you're certain that God exists, you're certain that God gave us the Torah, no doubt whatsoever. You feel it. Just like if all the philosophers or psychiatrists or psychologists or whatever in the world come and try to convince you that you do not exist, after they finish speaking, you'll say, "Boy, I'm glad those guys left there, a bunch of nuts." The best reasons, greatest logic in the world cannot convince you you don't exist. It maybe can confuse you, but everybody knows they exist. The same thing is Mashiach and Moses come to make every human being feel and be certain that they exist. And that's what Mashiach is. That's what the Rebbe is trying to do here in these words of Chassidut. Okay? All right. The Rebbe here is talking about a very interesting thing. What happened in these days? Excuse me. These were also the 22nd day of Shvat is the day of the passing away of the Rebbe's wife. The Rebbe's wife, which she also was the daughter of the previous Rebbe, which that officially put the Rebbe into the line of the family of the previous Rebbe, directly connected to the previous Rebbe. But even more, that was when the United Nations made a meeting together, and they decided, I think this was in the days of Reagan, what was it, Gorbachev? And they decided what was like a moratorium, that they were going to stop making atomic bombs. It was going to a ceasefire as far as war, and they're going to direct the money to more beneficial things. I think it lasted for a while. It also did. They even agreed that each one could check the other one's places and messengers. I don't know exactly what the details, but it was a very major move toward world peace. And now it's true that things sort of lapsed since then, but it just showed that it is possible, and it opened up the door for the potential there can be, and there certainly will be, world peace where all of mankind will respect life. Okay. This is from the speeches of you do it is known. Shekol Orot, that every occasion, every event that occurs in the world, Hein Bashkacha Pratis, is directed by God. Not major events that are in the newspapers, but every cat that finds a little piece of something in the garbage, and every little fish that eats another fish, everything is determined by God. Everything. So God not only created everything back then, 20 billion years ago, but the fact is God created everything 5,700 years ago. That's the fact. Much closer than we think. And God not only created everything 5,700, whatever, 60, 86 years ago, but God is creating everything right now. So that's impossibly close. But that's closer than anyone can think. It's above thought. And not only is God creating everything right now, every instant, but God is also directing everything that's happening. Nothing happens without accident. Everything is under God's direction, which that is even closer than when we think. So we're making God more and more weird. If we say God created the world a few billion years ago, okay, just keep him away from me. I believe in God, just Don't let them come too close. Comes along Judaism and says, no. God created the world exactly 5,786 and a few months years ago. Says, okay, all right, the 5,000, that I don't believe that, but the Jews want to believe it, they can believe it. Let them believe it. But now God's getting closer and closer, right? The enemy is approaching. Now we say, no, God is creating the world brand new every day. What do you mean every day? Every day is creating the world. Maybe in the morning when the sun comes up. He says, no. God is creating every instant. He's creating you every instant. He says, this is a little bit too much. God is creating everything. This is 1 second. We're not finished. God is even directing everything in the world. Everything that happens is under God's direction. So 1 second. If God is directing everything in the world, then how do we have free choice? If God is directing everything, right? So that's another one of God's creations. It's getting more and more mysterious and more freaky every moment, right? God is creating everything, but we have total free will. And how do you explain that? It says not only that, God is creating everything, and He cares about everything. You have free will, and God cares about what you choose. He reacts to what you choose. In the generation of the flood, when people weren't doing good, so God made a big flood, killed everybody. When the Jews weren't acting right, so God destroyed the first the temple, the second commandment. God reacts. God listens to our prayers. God cares about it. So everything that happens in the world, the most minor, small things you can learn from. It says that King Solomon understood the birds, what the birds had to say, what the palm trees had to say. He understood this oneness of God, how the oneness of God is being expressed. And of course, this is not, it has very little practical implications to what the birds are saying, or so we think. Okay, here we go. So, but when something really big happens, this must really show on something really important going on as far as God is concerned. And again, I know I repeated this 1,000 times, but man is very important to God. This world, physical world, is very important to God. That's the message of the Bible, of the Torah. The world is not here by accident. It's not here just because God was bored. It was like, people scribble while they're talking on the phone or something like that. That's how the world got created. God was talking to a big angel or something, or maybe he was talking to another God on the phone. How are things going on over there? He just scribbled around, and there created the world, right? Created the world. No, it's not so. It's not so. God created the world intentionally, and everything in the world is very important. And God is creating everything right now intentionally, and everything is very important to God. Very important to God. That's the whole purpose of the Torah. So what happens in the world is very important to God. And it's very important to reality, especially when something really big happens. So here we go. Listen, you do it's known that every event that occurs in the world is by God's direction. The yesh b'hem, and there is a learning and a teaching for the service of God, of man to God. As I said before, what we do is very important to God. And God gave us the Torah, so we should always do the right thing. And usually doing the right thing is difficult. It's unusual, usually. And usually the things that are the most difficult to do, and they're good, they're the most important. So here we go. Alakas kama b'kama, how much more so? But sometimes things happen easy. Like God took us out of Egypt, God gave us the Torah, God did the whole business. So how much more so if there is an event which occurred, a general event which occurred in the world, which all the countries in the world participated, then in them, especially the major countries that have the majority of people in the time of exile, namely America and Russia, Bali, Hashpa, Manigut, Bakal Olam Kula, and they direct the whole entire world, that also the learning from these has to be in a general and a very, very all-encompassing way. Similarly to the events which has happened just now, recently, just now in our days. What are they? L'kol Rosh, first of all, Ha'ma'ura She'ira, what happened in this Shabbat, where the Rebbe was speaking. What's happening right now when we're speaking, the Rebbe was speaking. This is 1992, right in the beginning of 1992. That in it, all of the people, all of the big countries in the world gathered together, the important nations, Ubarosham, and at the head of them, of the two big leading countries in the world, which at that time was Russia and America. And they decided, and they announced, al tekufat chadasha, on a new era in mankind, biyachase medinot olam, in the interrelationship between the countries of the world, namely what? Bittel matzav milchama. There will never be any more wars between the countries of the world. That will be expressed also, but simsum will bittel kli neshek, that there won't be any more the weapons of war. The shalom ba'achdut, and there will be peace and unity. Shituf pu'ula ve'ezra hadarit, that there will be cooperation and help one the other. What do they call it? Another word for it. Anyway, partnership. Bein medinas olam, between the countries of the world. Latova and ashit, for the benefit of all mankind. Huh? That's what they agreed. That's what they agreed. And it worked. They all agreed that there's not going to be any more war. And then various things happened. It's not important what happened, but just the idea that there was a thing, even if it was only temporary, it showed that it was possible. It opened up a door for a totally new era in interpersonal and international relationships. Before this, there was a speech in his country, in Russia, to the whole entire nation. It says, and it was on Wednesday, right before Shabbat, and it said, Shahudia, that he announced, Vichriz, and made known. He made known and announced, Al Pu'ulotov, at his intention, and his steps, that Tzimtzum ubitul kli neshek, to minimize and eventually eliminate all weapons of war. The nitzul kasafim, and instead using the money that would not be used for war, in order to add on in what's it called? How could I forget the word? Okay, to add on in monetary things. Shel B'nai Medina, in the whole entire country. Economy, to the improving the economy of the whole country. It says, and this was okayed by the Beit HaNivcharim, Shabon Nikvu Chodche Medina, Sheyesh Lem Tokef Al Pi Torah, Din L'Malchus Adina. So Russia announced and America announced that everyone agreed that that's the way it was going to be. This was in the days of Reagan, right? Yesh Litbonen. We have to contemplate, what can we learn from this? Gamba Prati and Yanim, the Ma'ura, Makomo Vizmano, in its place and the time, in general, Shaychuso, the connection to Torah, and the connection to the Parsha of this week. So such a major thing, says the Rebbe, this is an opening up. Now, you have to remember another basic principle in Judaism, that all good things are eternal and all bad things are only temporary. Things which go against the Torah are temporary. That's why all the countries that opposed the Jews through the generations, as they all dissipated, they all went away. They don't exist anymore. They made trouble. It's a general principle that if you want to become big, you want to become famous, you want to become great, make trouble for the Jews. You make trouble for the Jews, it lifts you up, makes you famous, makes you help, popular, make you this, everything, and then over the night, you're gone. That's it. It just stops. It's as though it was never there. Then it pops up again, but the fact is, good things, on the other hand, are eternal. That's why the Jewish people are eternal. You just can't get rid of the Jewish people, no matter how much they hate them and how small they are and how weak they are. You can't get rid of the Jewish people. Okay. Because they're the essence, they're good, and you can't. So it says, here's something that good happened in the world. It happened in the world. Maybe it went away temporarily, but because it opened up something good, so that thing is good as eternal. What can we learn about it in the Torah? What? Halimud Torah, the teaching that we can learn from the fact that all the nations in the world got together and declared there's going to be world peace, is something we can learn about a very special thing in the service of the Jewish people to God. Ma'asenu v'avodatenu, our service of God all the time of exile, namely to bring to the Mashiach. This especially teaches us that it is very possible, very close, the arrival of Mashiach. It's possible there can be world peace. Mia Yoadim the Geula, one of the main features of the future redemption by means of the Mashiach, is relevant to the conduct of the whole world. Like Isaiah says, V'kitatu charboteim le'itim. They will pound their swords into plows. V'chinoteim lemezimrot, and their shields into another agricultural, whatever it is, hose or something, rakes. Lo yisa goy al goy cherev. Nations will not make, and they won't lift up their sword one another. Lo yilmadu od milchama, and there won't be any more war. That says in Isaiah, right in the beginning. And also in Micha, the prophet Micha also says the same thing. Why? Because life will be valuable. That's the point. Life will be valuable. Every human being is indispensable, irreplaceable. Life then will be valuable. That's what Mashiach will show. Mashiach, the whole idea of Mashiach is that everyone will appreciate God. And what does God appreciate? God appreciates the world. God appreciates the world. God appreciates every human being. It's very important to God. Therefore, God does not want that people will have war. It doesn't want that there should be destruction. The whole sifan to add on, that this will be is by means of the Mashiach. Mashiach himself, like it says in the beginning of that sentence in Isaiah, v'shafat bein hagoyim, that he will judge between the nations, v'ochiach la'amim rabim, and he will correct many people, countries. Hashofet o melech, and this judge will be the Mashiach. Sheyei adon kol olam, and he will judge the whole world. V'yochiach lahem, and he will reprove them. I would say he'll correct them. V'yomer lemishi yimtza bo'ovel, and he will tell those who have some sort of a something wrong, yesher amavot, and he will make straight the crookedness. Because of this, lo tiyeh milchama, there will not be war between one nation and another. Kihu yashlim, he will make peace between them. They won't have to have any weapons of war. Otam, and he will, as I say, pound them. They will become, instead of weapons of war, they will become things that you can work on the ground from. The whole world needs the ground. Everything lives from the ground. The animals eat from the ground. We eat the animals. We eat fruit, bread. Shekain also ba'acharit yomim, in the last days will be Yehar Beit Hashem v'naru alav, that the mountain in Jerusalem, and all of the nations will go to the holy mountain. V'holchu amim rabim v'amu lechem, and they will say, Nale el har Hashem, let us go to the mountain of God, because that is where the house of God is, the third temple. V'yironu mitarachav v'nilchu ba'achrotav, and we will go after the mitzion tetzei Torah, because from Zion will come out the Torah. The Dvar Hashem and the word of God will come from Jerusalem. Clear prophecy of Isaiah again, right in the beginning. Right? It's also same of the Micha and Isaiah. You can look it up. Isaiah read the second 2 and 4, and Micha 4 and 3. So world peace will be one of the features of Mashiach. He even sensed that in these days, Machlitim, we are deciding, machrizim, and we announce, Rosh Medina, the head of the countries of all the world, al date simsum ubitel, that they should minimize and eventually eliminate all weapons of war, and they should direct the money to the world economy and benefiting the world. That'll be and they will be they will pound their swords into plows or whatever, into tractors or whatever. Shabirat Kli Milchama, breaking the weapons of war, in order that they should be weapons, tools for working on the ground. It says that the work on the ground, that from it comes bread. Harizeh Simon, this is a clear sign that this is the beginning of this time of the Geula Amitah Shlema by means of the Mashiach. So world peace peeked through the window. We saw it was a possibility, something that had never been before in the history of the world. So if so, we are on the highest time, the Hechtet, the highest times of the coming of the Mashiach. The coming of the Mashiach is coming. So we see already, at the beginning, what the Mashiach is doing among the people. And the Rebbe is going to say it's not by accident that this meeting happened in New York, which New York was the place that the previous Rebbe decided would be the center of Chabad activities in the world. Shafet ben Agoyim, that the Mashiach will judge between the nations, and he will reprove many nations, and they will pound their plows into, and pound their swords into plows. By means of this, that God will put into the hearts of the kings of the nations, the leaders of the nations, Leiv Malachim B'Sharon B'Yad Hashem, says that the nations, the leaders of the nations, is in the hand of God. L'achriz, to announce together that they would all turn their plows turn their swords into plows, that they would pound all their atom bombs, whatever, into implements of agriculture. V'zeu hatam, this is the reason that they decided and they announced that this is now. Why? Because it's connection to the future redemption that's supposed to come now. So the Rebbe, we've been talking so much about Mashiach, and that through the 4,000 years of Judaism, especially since we got out of Egypt, talking about Mashiach is coming and Mashiach is going to come, and all the pains we see and all the troubles are from Mashiach. Now we've especially increased, the Rebbe especially increased the talking about Mashiach, that we can't ignore the topic about Mashiach. It says, therefore, it's only proper that here in New York right now should be a manifestation, a little bit of sign, Mashiach is really coming, namely world peace. Now again, world peace comes because people value life, a value of life. And that's the main accomplishment of Mashiach, valuing life in this physical world. The devaluation of life is one of the causes of war and things like that. Thinking about going to heaven, we're going to go to heaven and heaven and heaven. We see especially nowadays in Islam that the disrespect for the physical world and the desire to go to the heavens, we're going to go to heaven, I'm going to be a martyr, I'm going to go to heaven, that's one of the biggest causes of war. I don't care if people live or die. I don't care if I live or die in this world, because I'm going to live eternally in the upper world. So that's the opposite of peace. That's the opposite of peace. And the essence of Judaism, to bring peace, is to show how important life in this physical world is every moment. The Yeslo Sifrim, we can add on, that the connection of this to the beginning of the coming of the Mashiach, the fact that the United Nations made peace, this is a sign of Mashiach. Why? Is stressed especially in the details. What are the details of this declaration of world peace? The place and the time. The place was, they decided, all the countries, they came together, and the place, what was the place? The place happened in New York. This is the Makom Yuchad, this is the special place that all the country, the representatives of the world, kadei, in order the taber, to speak between them, and that in a pleasant way, No one yelled, no one accused in a way of peace. It happened in this country and this city, Israel. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. This country and this city, I'm talking about the country where I am, New York, Medina, the country and the city, Shabo, that in it is found Beit Rabbeinu Shabbat, the house of a rabbi in Babylon, Beit Chayim. This is a Beit Knesset, this is a synagogue, and Beit Midrash, and the place of learning, Beit Torah, a place of Torah, a place of prayer, a place of good deeds of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. Shabachar Bo, that he chose it, the Kavu, and he set that in this place would come Torah. The Torah, spreading out of the Torah. And the wellspring should go out to all the corners of the world. Sha'az, then, that's 770, the place where Chabad is, that's the source, the wellspring of all these ideas of Chassidut, because that's what the Rebbe taught to the whole world. Sha'az, then we akim a yud, then the world will benefit from all weapons of war to become weapons of agriculture. New York. From New York, that's the place where the previous Rebbe said where Chabad is, and Chabad is the how do you say, the source of Mashiach in the world. Source of the wellspring of Mashiach in the world. Okay, so again, how do you appreciate life? How do you appreciate life? The way you appreciate life is by appreciating how much God appreciates life. The more you appreciate God, the more you can appreciate how God loves this physical world. If you love God, then you love the physical world on God's terms. But the physical world is tremendously, tremendously important to God and every human being in it. So the more you understand God, and the more you realize how important this physical world is. That's Chassidut. So Chassidut describes all the upper worlds and all these different levels and everything like that, and to understand how infinitely real and, how do you say, what is the word? Omnipotent God is. Good word, omnipotent. The God is infinitely, he creates all these upper worlds with the angels in them and everything, and they're just little creations. What's the main thing? But you wow, angels, I didn't know God is so infinite. He creates the angels. God creates all these other gods that all the other religions believe in, that God creates it. And the most important thing to God is this physical world. When you see that this world is important and every human being is important, then you start to really value life, not on your terms, on God's terms, which is incomprehensible. So you realize that life is incomprehensibly valuable. Every human life. And that was what brings peace. And where's this weird idea spread out about how important this world is to God? But there's one rabbi in Chabad, he says that God needs us. So there's other rabbis that, they basically have no idea what Chabad is. How can you say a thing like that? Okay, it's a sort of a little bit of a misleading statement, a little bit, because God, of course, does not need anything to exist. God creates everything. So everything comes from God. He doesn't need anything. But on the other hand, for God's completeness, God needs our commandments in order to get pleasure from. So, of course, God himself doesn't need, but the world is so tremendously important, right? That if God is missing anything in this world, God is, so to speak, he's missing something. We're talking on God's terms. This is not comprehensible. But on the other hand, we have to stress, right? If you say that God doesn't need us, it's like throwing it away. You're saying, the world is not important to God. God doesn't care about the world. What does he care about what we do? Makes no difference to him. So in God's essence, of course, im chatata, mataselo, etc. Right? If you do bad, it doesn't affect the essence of God. Of course, it doesn't. But on the other hand, everything except for God's essence is very connected to this world, and that is very connected to this world. And even more, God's essence is connected to the Jewish people. The Jewish people and God's essence are one, even higher than the Torah. So we're dealing with things we don't understand, but we're trying to understand the miraculousness of life. We don't really understand anything. It's God's world. It's not ours. And our understanding is also God's. So the more we connect to that, the more we can connect to this idea of that the world is God's world. God wants there to be peace. God wants there to be people. He wants there to be life. And the Indian is this: Bavo and Nasi, when it comes to our generation, the people of our generation, to the lower part of the world, that's the lower half of the world. The upper half of the world is where the Torah was given. And the lower half of the world is the opposite side of the world. America, that's so this is called the lower half of the world. When the previous Rebbe came here, Kava Makomo, and he put his decided to live in this country, America, in this city, Hithchil Betokef Nasa Birur, then he started to refine the bottom part of the world, the part where the Torah was not given. Shagam Bo, then in it was drawn down a revelation of the giving of the Torah. That the Torah, the word the Torah was given, that's called the upper half of the world. The Yeterim is even more. Shenas al makor shemimenu nimshach. It becomes that the source of Torah, that it was that where the Torah comes from, ikar pula tafatzat yadut, became mainly not in where the Torah was given, the upper part of the world in Europe and whatever, but from here, specifically from America, spread out Torah to the whole world by means of what the shluchim, the Rebbe's emissaries, sheshalach barachvei olam, that he sent to the ends of the world, and he sent them also to the upper part of the world, right? From America, paradoxically, Torah became spread out where even to Israel. Ad lepina hachi nidatek, into the furthest, I say, the most distant place in the world, right? In weird places in Russia, Kazakhstan, and these little weird little corners where there could be a Jew, in order to spread Torah and Judaism to all the Jewish people, including and especially those who are Jews who are dwelling among the non-Jews, and they speak only in the language of the non-Jews, and they do the customs of the non-Jews, but and even more. Gamze, and this is the main thing, spreading out all of the good and the kindness and justice even to the non-Jews by means of doing the 7 Noahide commandments. Because the 7 Noahide commandments have to be done because God gave them on Mount Sinai. If they do them according to their own logic, it's very nice, but it won't last. It won't last. Germany is perhaps the best example in the world. They were the most ethical and moral and philosophical and proper, just nation in the world, right? And not to talk about how they were, they were progressive. They were progressive, and they were cultured. The culture of Germany, who was the big thing, and scientific was the best. And just in a few days, they turned to be monsters, each and every one of them. Wanted to kill the Slavs and to kill anyone who didn't agree with them, kill them, no problem, right? All of a sudden it became okay because they did it according to their own mind. Kamudgash, like it's expressed, especially in the last years, as we come closer and closer to the Moshiach, that it says that then the nations, all of the nations will become transformed to call God, all of them, in one group. Another prophecy of Isaiah, it's Zephaniah. This is in Zephaniah. That the whole world will call out only to God. And this, I think we're going to have to stop over here. Let's do a little bit more. And in the last period, says the Rebbe, recently, there were all these miracles that happened. It was called the miracles around Tafshin Nun Aleph. That was when the Iron Curtain fell. That was when Saddam Hussein, he shot all these 39 huge, massive rockets into Israel, and they blew up whole buildings and all the areas, and no one was hurt. In Israel, no one was hurt. Absolutely nobody. I don't know if that's a bigger miracle than what just happened now. I mean, just 2 years ago, our enemies, the Hezbollah and this, of course, was with the okay of the United Nations and all the nations in the world. They were all against us, and they shot 30,000 missiles into Israel. They weren't as big as Saddam's missiles, but each one of them had the power, let's say 20 hand grenades or something like that. That was the smallest of them. And they shot, and almost no one was hurt. 30,000 missiles were shot. Anyways, back then it was a sufficient miracle that 39 missiles were shot into Israel, and they knocked down huge buildings with the people in them, and no one was hurt. No one was hurt. And it was incredible. And then the Iron Curtain fell. So we see all these big miracles were happening. Everybody was living just on, Higia Pu'ula, all of a sudden came to the height of miraculousness, of godliness, that all the countries all got together and they carved out on their flag, and they announced that they were, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Especially even more, who came? Russia. Russia actually came and admitted that life is important. The same Russia that just years earlier that they had carved out on their flag a war against Torah, a war against Judaism, a war against any faith in God, communism, including also putting into prison the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, that he's the leader of our generation, and sentencing him to death. And afterwards, as a result from that, they expelled him from the country. They expelled him from Russia. They said, okay, we'll let you out of prison, but get out of here. Nevertheless, Nimshecho Gam Sham, even the Russia, they didn't want to have anything to do with a person like the Rebbe. They wanted to kill him, but they figured at least we'll get rid of him. That same country, that same Russia that was opposed to life, they say that Stalin killed 50 million people. That was one estimate. Some people say it wasn't such a bad guy. He only killed like 30 million people. Some people say 20 million people, right? Don't demonize them so much. Only 20 million people. And they killed. It was the country of death. They killed so many people. They were against God. They were against life. They were against everything. Especially they were against Judaism. That country, same Russia, they came all of a sudden to America and announced that they want peace with the world. And that you can spread out Torah and you can spread out Judaism in Russia. Until Shabbat Lagazer. I'm sorry, I skipped the line. It says, okay, even Russia that expelled the Rebbe, and in order to spread out Judaism, it had to be with total self-sacrifice. Says now all of a sudden in our generation, there was negated all opposition to Judaism. And they're allowing spreading out Judaism and Torah and the commandments even more than before in a revealed way. Like I said, nowadays, if you go there, the big Chabad headquarters in Moscow, huge, beautiful synagogue. It's 5 stories high. It's across the street from the KGB building. But the Nefilatoshel and Mishtar and communism totally fell down. And now there's a whole new government that they announced that there's going to be charity and honesty and peace on the faith of believing in God as the leader. So nowadays we have over there in Russia, they actually announced that they believe in God. The leader believes in God. That was unheard of, right? So it says the Rebbe, we're in a tremendously high period. What's this got to do with us? This and much more we'll learn tomorrow.